All right, welcome back to the week 4 edition of High School Sports Talk. Once again, I'm Josh Kirby. You can find my work over on the Kirby on Sports podcast, www.kirbyonsports.com. Once again, joined by the voice of high school football on Fox Sports 1550.iheart.com is Dan Gloster. Dan, thanks for hopping in again. Good to hear from you. And we have two games that you called this week: Sherando versus Musselman and Handley versus Skyline, the Saturday game as well. So, I mean, getting right into it, Sherando, an 0-3 team looking for confidence somehow, some way. And this looked like a nail biter, a goal line stand after penalties. Musselman backed up to their 10-yard line. And Sherando makes a big defensive stop. Dan, first and foremost, obviously a huge confidence builder off of this game for Sherando to kick things into the right direction, in my opinion. What were your thoughts about that game? Just give us a rundown there.
Well, just right off the top, Josh, Dylan Rutherford throws a pick. First play of the game.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and Musselman scores on that play, and then Sherando jumps offside, so then they go for two, they get it. So they're down 8-0 with, looking at my stat sheet, 14, less than 2 minutes into the game, Sherando's down 8-0. So, but they would respond with 28 unanswered points right after that. They led 28-8. With about 5.5 minutes left in the second quarter. But they kept letting Musselman stay in the game. Musselman would get these big plays, and that's where it came down to, as close as it was. I mean, it was 49-30 with 10:20 left in the fourth quarter, and Sherando was up, and the final score was 49-43. Musselman recovered an onside kick. They forced a fumble. So it's a game where I give a lot of credit to Musselman and Dylan Rutherford, because I mentioned that he threw the pick on the first play. Josh, remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Well, he ended up throwing 3 touchdowns after that. No more interceptions and 3 touchdowns. So big congrats to Dylan Rutherford for not hanging his head and coming back strong. But all in all, the game shouldn't have been that close. Sherando kind of let him back in. But again, with that being said, it's a good win for him. That's not an easy place to play. It's a really good atmosphere. And that was just one of those scrappy teams that Musselman tends to always have. And they just wouldn't quit. But it's probably good for Sherando to go through a game like that, because, with some youth, that you learn a lot in a game like that, hey, the game's not over. Even though you're up big, the game's not over and your opponent can come back. So, a good win for Sherando. Now they're 1-3, and they dropped Musselman to 1-3 on the season. So, and it was for broadcasting wise, it was our first really kind of competitive game. Even though it had those big leads, it finished up being a really close game. So that was a fun thing to do, and Mike and I enjoyed it. But kudos to Sherando for getting that win.
Yeah, so like you said, it's a great atmosphere up there at the pit in Inwood. But like you just mentioned, it was probably one of the more entertaining games, and you probably had a bunch of good lordy wows if I were to guess correctly, or something similar.
Yeah, but I would be remiss before we move on not mentioning Cam Sullivan, Josh. I mean, 27 carries, 247 yards, and 3 touchdowns, but he had 214 at the end of the first half. So they bottled him up pretty good in the second half, but still 247 yards and 3 touchdowns for Cam Sullivan. He was our Sherando player of the game, but whale of a game for Mr. Sullivan. Just running hard, and Gavin Bly, those two guys out of the backfield there, that's a good combination for Sherando. Cam's a power runner, and then you got Bly. He's kind of a slasher, really good. He'll make good cuts, and he'll make people miss. But both really hard runners. So both those guys had really good games. But again, Cam Sullivan really shined bright.
I tried to tune into some of the game on and off or following on Winchester Star on Twitter.
Right.
Did you see much of AJ Santiago at wide receiver? How did he look in that game?
Well, AJ had a couple of plays where he almost came down with a catch and didn't. I mean, that kid is he's electrifying. I mean, for the size that he is, he really makes the most of what he's got. But he did have a touchdown catch of let's see, 41 yards from Dylan Rutherford. A couple of catches, I think. Not a big stat night for him, but I think they use him probably, and it forces defenses to pay more attention to him, and that leaves guys like, say, Zach Simons. Zach, he caught a 42-yard touchdown pass. He was single coverage, and so Santiago kind of helps those matchups happen, because I think you gotta put two guys on him, and that leaves other guys single covered. So that definitely he's making a difference. I guess what I'm trying to say, he's making a difference when he might not be making a big difference statistically. And again, but he still had a long touchdown catch, 41 yards. So, but yeah, it's good to see him back, because he did go out of that Martinsburg game. And I'm pretty sure when he dove for that pass against Martinsburg, he just landed right on the football, right in his gut, and it probably probably bruised him up a little bit, and they just thought, we're not going to win the game. Let's not risk it. So they held him out the rest of the game. It's just a guess. But he came back and had a decent game, Friday night.
So once again, Sherando 49, Musselman 43. The next game you covered on Saturday, Handley 56, Skyline 13 at the Handley Bowl. And I'm going to say what I said last week. It's always great watching a football game at Handley. I mean, that stadium, it's just great. And I wish I could go out there more often and watch football games more often. It's just a great place to watch a football game. Obviously, a hot one. And Handley over Skyline. Obviously, Skyline was not able to play on one of your previous broadcasts, but they're back in it against Handley. Stephen Daly only 87 yards rushing. I mean, Handley must have had a great game. They were just bringing in subs and just spreading the minutes out to so many different players. What did you see there?
Well, they've got two other guys that started running back. It's actually a 3 running back offense.
Oh, I see.
Emerson Fusco and also Deontay Trammell. They play a fair amount at running back along with Stephen Daly. So I think they were spreading the ball around a little bit. I mean, first play of the game, he actually threw a pass and completed a pass, did Stephen Daly on the first play of the game, went for 34 yards. So, it's one of those little wrinkles that, that's for teams that are preparing to play them, that's one play they probably just threw in there just to say, we can do a little different. We've got some trickeration here and there that you're going to have to kind of, take note of. And by focusing on that, you may lose focus on something else. So, just a little wrinkle, but again, they were just doing some not drastically different things, but just doing some different things. And, his carries were down a little bit, but heck, he still scored 4 touchdowns. He had 3 running, and then he had a defensive touchdown on a scoop and score. So Handley, they fumbled on their first possession when they drove down inside the 10-yard line. And so they didn't even score on their first possession when it looked like they were gonna. But then they got a safety out of that because the ball was right near the goal line when they did fumble, and Skyline just couldn't move the ball. And Rodney Davenport tackled one of the Skyline backs in the end zone for a safety. And so, again, not the greatest of starts, but I think they're getting closer to having a 4-quarter game. At this level with high school kids, it's hard to play 4 quarters of really error-free football. You're going to have some mistakes here and there. So, but they're just too much for Skyline. I mean, you give some credit to Aiden Vaught for Skyline. He did have 142 yards rushing, and I had him as a team gaining 265 yards. That's about a little over double what Handley was allowing on defense per game. So, the score was lopsided, but I think Skyline, it's probably a good game for Handley to have because they know that, they've got to be focused on every play. If you let down at this level, at any level, teams will do things against you. So, but overall, good win, 4-0 now, and Skyline, they're 0-2, and I mean, they had like 23 players dressed. I mean, it's hard to win a football game when you're playing with that little depth on your team. So, but give them credit that they battled hard, but just Handley just too much.
You look at this Northwestern district, and you look at some of the teams like Millbrook, Sherando, and they're off to slow starts. And you have teams like Handley, who's undefeated, and James Wood. They just beat Brentsville on Friday. They're both undefeated. This is something that probably us at you broadcasting, me as a follower of high school football, looking at this and like, wow, the tables have flipped here. Essentially, it's pretty interesting to me, but it makes for some entertaining high school football. But once again, James Wood, a home victory over Brentsville, and man, Jaden Ashby, hands down. He is looking incredible. He posted on Twitter, he made a catch in double coverage for a touchdown. I'm not sure if you saw that, but that was pretty impressive right there. And it just goes to show James Wood is just looking phenomenal so far this season. And I mean, just keeping up the great work there. I mean, seeing their dedication after moving their game from Skyline to Pulaski. Sorry if I mispronounced that, Dan, but still winning that game and then beating this Brentsville team. They're just looking pretty good.
I mean, again, like I said last week, confidence. They just keep getting more and more confidence. And, it's got to be contagious on that team. They got to be feeling really, really good about what they're doing right now. And they've only played 3 games, so they got a lot of their season left. But they probably feel like they can play with anybody. I mean, they've already beaten their arch rival Sherando, beat them by 2 scores at their place. So they'll have Liberty on the 15th at home. They go to Kettle Run next week. Of course, they'll have Handley on November 5th. That'll be a big one at home. So everything else, they got Millbrook on the 29th. Millbrook, I think that they're kind of lacking some players that can really get those explosive plays. I'm not sure they've got the athletes that can really stretch the field, if you will, or just make those. There's a term for it, and I can't bring it to mind, but those pop plays or whatever you want to call that, explosive plays. I'm not sure Millbrook quite has what James Wood has, what Handley has, as far as that goes. But for James Wood, again, they're, I'm sure, just continuing to increase as far as confidence goes, and you just can't underestimate that at this level. I think Kettle Run, that'll be a huge game. If they go to Kettle Run and beat Kettle Run, that's really going to be, because I'm pretty sure Kettle Run is a good solid football team. So going there and winning next week, that would be a big feather in their cap for James Wood.
Over the mountain to Kettle Run. That's a different conference district over there, but still some pretty good football over there. That's one game you got to look out for, most definitely.
Well, no, they're in the district. They're in the Northwestern District.
Oh, they are?
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
Oh, they're not in a different region?
No, Kettle Run, Liberty, Fauquier are all in the Northwestern District.
Oh, okay. Okay. I didn't realize that. I thought they were in a different classification of our see, high school football districts. It's not like NFC, AFC,
No,
East, Northwest, stuff like that. So apologies for that. But
sure.
anyways, the last game on our sheet, Clarke County 13-7, winning by 6 over Central. That's a classic rivalry. Clarke County over Central. I know you have some context. Did you hear anything major about this game? Any plays?
Yes, I did.
Getting the inside scoop from Dan Gloster.
Looking.
Clarke County is undefeated this season, if I remember correctly.
From what I gather from my trusty source, Mario Ratresi, old friend, his son Luke on the Central squad. Central fumbled a punt deep in their own territory that led to a Clarke touchdown in the third quarter, and then Central fumbled inside the 5 late in the game, and that could have been a score that would have put them on top. So some mistakes by Central, but still a really, really good game. Even though Central loses, I think, they can come away with knowing that they played, pretty much right with Clarke County, and Clarke County usually right there at the top of the Bull Run District, and I don't think this year is any different. Clarke was coming off their bye week, and before that they had just demolished Manassas Park in a game that we did that was just, we were talking about old war stories. Mike and I said that's how bad it got in that game. 69-0 was the final score. So, you have your bye week after that, and then you have to come back and play a really good team. That shows that Clarke was really well prepared in the game. They didn't, they didn't start slow, that kind of thing. So credit to Casey Childs and the Clarke coaching staff. But all in all, sounds like it was a really competitive game, and just Clarke probably made a few more plays than Central did.
Absolutely. So that about wraps it up. Sherando 49, Musselman 43, Handley 56, Skyline 13, James Wood 37, Brentsville 15, and Clarke County 13, Central 7. That is your week 4 scoreboard for high school sports talk. Dan, as always, thanks so much for coming on. It's always a pleasure chopping it up with my good friend Dan Gloster. Once again, this has been High School Sports Talk. You can also check out myself, Josh Kirby, www.kirbyonsports.com. And we will probably catch you next week on the next edition of High School Sports Talk. Until then, our time is up. We thank you for yours. Finish it.
You just did. Good night.
Yes. Good night.